on this edition of In the Life.
The gay wizards of Wall Street. Heeding warnings about hepatitis. And Hedwig and the Angry Inch goes to the movies. All this and more on In the Life, America's gay and lesbian news magazine. In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by Rick Weiland, Peter Zimmer and Jim Stepp, the Gill Foundation, the Reed Williams Foundation, the Mitchell Gold Company, in the hopes of eliminating all types of fear and prejudice.
Thank you.
And the annual support of In the Life members like you.
Welcome to In the Life. I'm Katherine Linton. Stormy. It seems like an appropriate name for a woman who, for over 80 years, has weathered her share of controversy and confrontation. On this episode of In the Life, we'll profile Stormé DeLarverie, a lesbian pioneer who's been at the center stage of gay life for decades. From a male impersonator in the groundbreaking drag show called the Jewel Box Review, to the spark that some say ignited the Stonewall riots, DeLarverie has become a living legend. Correspondent Daniel Karslake reports on countries where gay men and lesbians serve openly in the military, and Mason Essif with a campaign to combat hepatitis.
Basically, there's two different kinds.
Oh, they look great.
With the city committed to a hepatitis initiative, Drew Emery at the Public Health Department was the man to make it happen.
One of the messages that we were promoting is that vaccine makes you stronger, because it does. You are going to fight disease before it gets to you.
But first, we turn to the world of finance. It's a high-powered domain not historically known for its gay friendliness. But thanks to a few courageous gay men and lesbians, that is quickly changing. In fact, this spring, when the Gay Financial Network published its second annual list of the 25 most influential out executives in corporate America, even Fortune magazine took notice. In the Life decided to take a closer look at this new breed of activism. Andy Hum has the story.
Gay Financial Network founder Walter Schubert is a third-generation member of the New York Stock Exchange. And when he came out in 1994, he also became the first openly gay person to hold a seat there. Needless to say, it wasn't easy being the first one out in the conservative world of Wall Street.
Growing up as a gay man, I did not have anyone that I could turn to seek as a role model. Someone to give me courage, someone to point the way for me. If I wanted to live my life openly and honestly. And we felt that to identify the quiet but yet constructive efforts made by individuals, those role models would encourage today's youth and other not so young folks in the workplace.
That initiative led to the creation of the GFN 25, now in its second year.
The GFN 25 is a survey done annually by GFN.com seeking to identify the 25 most powerful, openly gay and lesbian executives in corporate America.
Each of the GFN.com 25 have, in their own way, helped change attitudes in corporate America. In the Life caught up with two who offer very different examples of the kind of behind-the-scenes activism that is reshaping our economic and cultural landscape. With the Meyers Pride Fund, money manager Shelly Meyers has proven that being gay-friendly is not only viable for corporate America, it's profitable. Morningstar, the leading provider of investment information, has given its highest rating to the fund.
Those early articles in the financial press were saying, yeah, but what about the performance? You know, is this woman going to make any money? And I'm very proud to say that this is a 5-star Morningstar fund, and today one of the top 25 funds in the country. The Pride Fund is a mutual fund that only invests in companies that have written anti-discrimination policies in place for gays and lesbians. The reasons I started this Pride Fund is there wasn't a product out there that really focused on the issues of job discrimination for gays and lesbians, and I felt that tied into management teams that have the vision and the open-mindedness that I think managers need to have in order to provide superior returns here in the 21st century. And second, it's so important for gays and lesbians to start thinking about providing for their futures.
Shelly has stuck to a very disciplined approach, not sacrificing her focus on value, and yet at the same time is able to marry that with companies who also have very strong and explicit policies protecting gays in the workplace.
The first openly gay member of the senior management team at J.P. Morgan Chase, Martin Atkin, has been instrumental in the development of non-discrimination policies, domestic partner benefits, and an LGBT employee group.
I don't feel that my being gay is something that is front and center for either myself or for the colleagues around me. While I have been through my process of coming out and operating as an openly gay man in this environment, similarly, corporate America and J.P. Morgan specifically has been through many changes which reflect that same kind of journey.
Policies are changed by people. Attitudes are changed by experience. And openly gay human beings in the context of the workplace, especially in senior management levels, are changing the attitudes and the awareness of corporate America for the better towards the gay community.
We were very early in doing specific recruiting. J.P. Morgan was the first to do the DP benefits for same-sex partners. That is more broadly true now of the financial services industry. And frankly, the way in which we now approach the gay and lesbian community feels very little different to me than the way in which we approach the African American community or the Hispanic community.
We don't just passively look for companies that have these policies. We engage company managements in active discussions about their policies. And I have a unique, not just me, but Wall Street has a very unique door open to them when it comes to company managements. We get invited to numerous lunches and dinners with the top executives. We have access to the top executives that you simply would not get walking in through the front door. And I feel like I can make a different kind of contribution behind the scenes. We are not going to have full civil rights in this country until we come out en masse. I can understand why people don't come out. People are afraid of losing their jobs. Now, we need to make the workplace a safe place.
More and more companies have to take seriously that here is a 5-star fund which will potentially invest in their company, but only if that company has stated anti-discrimination policies. So I think Shelly Meyers has done a great deal to advance equal rights, civil rights for Americans who are gay. Martin has articulated extremely well for the management of J.P. Morgan that you would rather have your workforce in the office dedicated to doing a good job and maximizing their productivity rather than having them closeted and spending a great deal of energy covering their tracks and hiding the fact that they're gay.
I've been far more successful since I was able to integrate the professional side of my life and the personal side of my life in a very open and clear way. I know that will be true for most others, and it's a contribution not only to me as an individual, but to the firm. I see the benefit to the firm very clearly. We don't compete by making a better car, we compete by putting better teams of people in front of our clients. And if we're to put the best in front of our clients, we need to attract the best. And the best isn't a single complexion of person, it's a diverse complexion of person.
We're beginning to see the role models, and we're beginning to see the success stories, and we're not only beginning to see these stories, but we're beginning to see how these people have made a difference, wherein it hasn't necessarily jeopardized their jobs.
It would be great to see universal adoption of anti-discrimination policies, universal adoption of DP benefits for gays and lesbians, because I believe that those two actions by corporate America are highly visible and highly measurable.
I'd like to see the vast majority of gays and lesbians investing for their own financial security. To me, an ideal world is that we don't have to do interviews like this anymore, and that my fund becomes completely and totally obsolete.
I guess as a segue back to the GFN 25, that's kind of why we've gone out there to highlight these individuals and to highlight those corporations that are truly understanding that diversity is good for the bottom line, and it's also good for the corporate soul and the corporate culture.
I'm not going to say that that process of change is over. There's yet more to be done, and I'm sure we have bridges yet to cross that we may not yet have fully identified, but we are certainly out there making the progress, and it's irreversible.
Most people don't spend much time preparing themselves for unexpected losses. And while legal marriage carries with it a series of statutes that automatically protect partners in many such situations, lesbians and gay men enjoy none of these protections unless we make our own provisions. There's no way to secure all of the rights of marriage, but we can protect ourselves and our families by creating wills, powers of attorney, and parenting agreements, to name a few. Resources include regional and national organizations, as well as a growing number of law firms that practice or even specialize in this area of law. To locate resources in your area, look for a link on the In the Life website at inthelifetv.org. I'm Kate Clinton, and you're watching In the Life.
When it comes to summer escapist films, you might not think that a movie musical about a transsexual rock singer would make the list. But this July, audiences will be introduced to Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
I was born on the other side.
Not since the release of the Rocky Horror Picture Show 25 years ago has such an outrageous transgender character held front and center in a musical film. But something about the troubled Hedwig recently won the hearts of audiences and critics at both the Sundance and Berlin film festivals. Hedwig and the Angry Inch might very well be the summer film that allows moviegoers to escape to a place of meaning and wonder.
It's the story of an East German army wife who's a transsexual and a rock and roll singer. And she tells her story of how she used to be a boy in East Berlin, and she got a sex change to marry an American GI so she could get over the wall.
That GI then whisks Hedwig off to Kansas, but not before the sex change operation is botched, leaving Hedwig with, you guessed it, an angry inch.
It's a musical, but it's pretty serious at times too, and pretty funny at times too, I hope.
What I love so much about this film is it's so incredibly complex with the gender twists and identity.
If there was ever a movie that's truly this unique, I think it's Hedwig. I mean, I don't know why, it just strikes a chord with people.
John Mitchell and I had met on a plane flying back from Los Angeles. We were the only two people on the plane not watching the in-flight movie. And I moved my seat so that I didn't have to watch the movie, and I sat next to him and we became friends.
Mitchell teamed up with composer-lyricist Stephen Trask. Together, they developed the critically acclaimed off-Broadway production.
It was just a story that we were telling, and I guess we told it well enough so that it could appeal to a fairly diverse audience.
You want to work on that new song? The hit? Will I finish trimming your eyebrows?
Through songs and flashbacks, Hedwig relates how she finds a protege in young Tommy Gnosis, who aspires to be a rock star.
For his graduation present, I gave him his name, Tommy Gnosis, the Greek word for knowledge. We collaborated. Songs exploded out of us. Teenage girls started showing up. In 3 months, we were outgrossing monster trucks in Wichita. With that kind of money coming in, I was able to devote myself entirely to our career. We were very happy.
Tommy eventually leaves Hedwig, steals her songs, and becomes a huge touring rock star. Hedwig and her band, the Angry Inch, are always close on Tommy's concert trail.
God. Is that his new single? Don't do it, sweetie. Please, please don't say anything to him today. If you do, he's got the power. You know what I mean? He's got the power. All we need is a snapshot. Then they'll know that you were responsible for some of the biggest hits of the millennium, and you will be so f***ing rich.
In the spirit of the gender-bending plot, actor Miriam Shore plays Yitzhak.
He's a Croatian man who used to be a drag queen back in the day in Croatia, and now he's a backup singer and roadie for Miss Hedwig in her band Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And much to his chagrin, he's out of the limelight. John figured, and Stephen figured, you know, it would be interesting to have a woman portraying this male character, just to mix it up a bit.
Don't move.
Not only does John Cameron Mitchell star as Hedwig, the film also marks his debut as a director.
John was the right person to direct this film because he knew the material in and out. He created it, and it was clear that it was, you know, running through his blood.
Put on some makeup, turn on the 8-track.
It wasn't much fun directing myself because I felt like I wasn't really enjoying the acting as much as the directing, so it was kind of a pain when I had to get into the frame and have to do it, you know, but then I'd have to put the wig on and, you know, get back out there. Hedwig's sex change is more of a metaphor than a personal biography. Hedwig is forced into this position and really does learn something intensely about wholeness and what it means to be whole, what it means to be man, and what it means to be woman. And in the end, discovers that she actually is both, and that it's better to be both.
There's sort of a universality of trying to fit into your own skin and figure out who you are in this world that suddenly hits people, and you start off thinking, it's some campy woman I can't relate to at all, and at the end you're like, that's me. Somehow I'm, you know, Hedwig in a way. And I think that surprise, it catches you off guard.
And you know, being gay, I had the privilege to be in touch with a side of myself that I might not have. So in that case, sexuality was connected to gender, you know, and for a lot of gay boys, you know, being in touch with their feminine side is a natural part of it, and for, you know, lesbian women, the opposite. It really is a gift if you choose to let it be, to let yourself look at things from a different point of view. And I think a lot of gay people actually don't take advantage of that gift.
On this episode's In the News, activists from Sri Lanka, Jamaica, and Chile were honored at the Felipa Awards, presented in New York by the International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission.
The mission of the International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission, which we fondly refer to as IGLHRC, is to advocate and protect the human rights of people based on their sexual orientation, gender identity, or HIV status all around the world. The Felipa Awards are our way of celebrating and honoring some of the activists that we work with. The awardees that we're honoring this year are Companions on a Journey and its Women's Support Group, and they're based in Sri Lanka.
This award means a lot to us, not only in Sri Lanka, but in our entire region of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Maldives, and Sri Lanka.
The most fascinating thing about groups like Companions is that they're reinterpreting what gay means and what human rights means in the countries where they're based.
The other awardee is the Jamaica Forum for Lesbians, All Sexuals, and Gays, and they're based in Jamaica.
In a region where human rights discourse is not popular, where international human rights gets pitted against the rhetoric of national sovereignty and local morality, J-Flag has chosen to use human rights conversations quite creatively.
Then we have a posthumous award that we're giving to Luis Gautier, who died late last year.
He was an outstanding gay activist in his native Chile, where for almost 30 years he fought for human rights.
Also in May, the One Institute and Archives celebrated the grand opening of their new home in Los Angeles.
The One Institute and Archives is the largest collection of historical material documenting the life experience of gay, lesbian, transgendered, and bisexual people. It's an international collection in scope. Many of our periodical collection is in 20 different languages. We have 30,000 books, 100,000 photographs, endless quantities of art and artifacts.
The existence of this archive has provided for many years one of the only resources that journalists, activists, teachers, documentary filmmakers, authors, scholars, and young people who are simply curious and trying to understand their own identity and position, and especially in a cultural context. It's been one of the only places all of those people can come to and find materials that make their way into books and meetings and new organizations. It works very much on both a political and a cultural front. There's an amazing wealth of material here. We really don't know. We know it's the biggest in the world as a lesbian and gay collection, but we're not sure exactly how big it is.
Tune in this fall for In the Life's 10th anniversary season and a closer look at the One Institute.
Hi, I'm Jewelle Gomez, and you're watching In the Life.
Still to come on In the Life.
Getting hip to hepatitis. And a lesbian pioneer weathers the storm. But first,
in past episodes, In the Life has examined the ongoing debate over the U.S. military's homosexual conduct policy, otherwise known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Don't Pursue. Except for Turkey, the United States is the only original member of NATO that still prohibits openly gay men and lesbians from serving in their military. Worldwide, 23 nations have lifted their bans against homosexuals in their armed forces. We've decided to explore what happened in those countries and how their experiences might affect the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Don't Pursue policy here in the U.S.
At a recent conference in San Francisco, California, the Center for the Study of Sexual Minorities in the Military gathered senior military officials from around the world to discuss what happened when they lifted their bans on service by gay and lesbian soldiers. Among those in attendance were representatives of Israel, Britain, Australia, and New Zealand, all of whom told similar stories about what did or didn't happen when their bans were lifted.
None of the militaries that have lifted their gay bans since the Dutch first lifted their ban in 1974 have reported any problems with unit cohesion or performance or morale or the retention of soldiers.
Aaron Belkin is the director of the Center for the Study of Sexual Minorities in the Military, which sponsored the conference.
And we found in each case that anti-gay experts predicted before the lifting of the ban that the change in policy would have disastrous consequences. But after the ban is lifted, even the most vocal opponents of gays and lesbians in the military now acknowledge that there has been no problem whatsoever.
In Australia, before the ban was lifted, we had dire predictions about recruitment would go down, people would leave, and we wouldn't be able to deploy again. After the ban was lifted, nothing happened. Life just went on the way it always had.
When the ban was lifted in Israel in 1993, there were not major consequences to the army at all. Again, this is something that the army did not initiate. It was imposed on the army by the government or the parliament or public pressure. But people did not leave the army because of that. There were no incidents of harassment or bullying of soldiers in the army. It was definitely a huge achievement for gay organizations and human rights organizations in Israel, but the army kept functioning the same way it did before.
There were predictions that there were going to be mass resignations, people wouldn't want to serve with openly gay people. There were all sorts of almost Armageddon predictions, and it couldn't be more opposite. Everything's been positive.
Rob Nunn joined the British Royal Navy in 1972. Just before his 20-year anniversary, he was investigated for being gay and was thrown out of the service because the British ban was still in place. Now, since the ban has been lifted in the UK, he's been reinstated.
It's an amazing sensation to actually be back in the Navy after all these years. It was hard fought. I was actually part of the organisation 5 or 6 years ago that started the campaign and put pressure on the government via the European Court. So I feel vindicated in the fact I was part of that.
What effect will the experiences of militaries in other countries have on American policy? Will Congress and military officials here even consider what's happened in other countries that have lifted their bans? As in the past, the Pentagon has refused to comment, so we spoke with military sociologist Laura Miller.
U.S. military leaders that I've talked to tend to reject the example of other services for how the U.S. should integrate women, how it should integrate gays, how it should act on peacekeeping operations, how it should deploy in wartime. In general, they see themselves in a much different role than other militaries. They see themselves as a superpower, one with great responsibilities and dire consequences for mistakes. They see themselves as having to be more concerned about combat effectiveness.
Some of the militaries that have lifted their bans are combat-tested forces such as the Israeli military and the British military, and generals and admirals and ministry officials in every case have reported that no decrease in combat performance has followed the lifting of a ban.
In order to convince military personnel that they should support the integration of open gays and lesbians into the military, they would need to hear arguments convincing them that it's in the military's best interest, that somehow excluding gays is more detrimental to the military, or more expensive, or more problematic than allowing gays in.
It was a terrible cost, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, for the service and for the nation, and of course for individual soldiers as well.
Though there is no single strategy to convey the cost of the policy to the military, Steve May, a Republican state representative from Arizona and Army reservist who was recently the very public target of a Don't Ask, Don't Tell investigation, is one of those who is speaking out.
First of all, we lose 3 to 4 service members every single day, despite their excellent performance, simply because of what they said about their sexual orientation. So 1,200 service members a year are discharged from the military for no apparent reason. Secondly, we don't know how many service members quit voluntarily because of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. I know one of the reasons that I left the military after just a short 2-year tour was because I no longer wanted to deal with the immorality of lying about who I am. So I don't know how many tens of thousands of people, if not more, resigned from the military simply because they no longer want to live a lie.
The policy costs about $30 million every year just to train replacements for those who are kicked out for being gay.
Dixon Osborne is the co-executive director of the Service Members Legal Defense Network.
But that really is just the tip of the iceberg. Not only are those numbers not adjusted for inflation, they don't take into account the cost of gay investigations, the time commanders spend, time lawyers spend, federal court litigation.
When the military goes into a unit and tries to ferret out who is gay and determine who is straight, they often sow the seeds of discord as peers turn against peers, as straight service members are encouraged to provide names of their gay peers, as gay peers are encouraged to provide names of their peers, and the fabric of a unit can be destroyed.
Bigotry hurts unit cohesion. That hurts the military in a very deep and profound way, and they're losing not just the people they hunt down, they're losing people who are just packing up their bags and resigning their commission or deciding not to re-enlist.
The ban sends a terrible message to the civilian sector. The military is the largest employer in the United States with 1.5 million active duty soldiers, and roughly a quarter of all men in the United States are veterans. And not only does military policy say that gays and lesbians are not entitled to equal rights, but the military is the only branch of government that actively seeks out gay and lesbian people in order to fire them.
In 1993, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Don't Pursue became law, which means Congress will have to pass another law to change it. Even though political leaders in Washington say they still support the current policy, there is widespread speculation among both liberals and conservatives that the policy will eventually be changed.
I do think it's likely that the ban on gays and lesbians serving in the military is likely to be lifted, say within the next decade. Especially when you have a case of what civilians would frame as private issues being used to influence a workplace decision. I think you're going to see more and more civilian opposition to any exclusionary policy.
I think the Israeli story is very relevant to the US. If you look, Israel is a democracy and America is a democracy. Israel was based on waves of immigration, and so is America, and the Israeli army serves as a melting pot, the same way that the American army serves for minority to socialize themselves into society. So I think that Israel is a very relevant example, and the US can definitely use it.
So I think the American people demand a change. And then Congress will follow suit after the momentum is built in the grassroots. And I think the military leaders will continue to oppose the change. But in the end, the military leaders will accept what their civilian commanders tell them to do. And in military terminology, even those military commanders who oppose the change will suck it up and drive on.
During the years that I played for the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Tigers, I knew I couldn't come out and continue to be a Major League Baseball player. For those serving in the military under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Don't Pursue, the consequences of coming out are even more clear. Service members have been harassed, imprisoned, discharged, and even murdered. The Service Members Legal Defense Network offers legal advice and support to those harmed under this policy. For more information, look for a link on the In the Life website at inthelifetv.org. I'm Billy Bean, and you're watching In the Life.
On this episode's In the Arts, 2 New York City events benefit progressive women's groups. In March, Jewish women roared as they gathered for an evening of words and music to benefit Jews for racial and economic justice and to celebrate Women's History Month.
Jewish Women Roar is a collection of loud, pushy, unafraid Jewish women's voices and music.
Performing for the event was Isle of Klesbos.
Gay and lesbians have always been present in progressive struggles. And the same thing in the Jewish community. A lot of those progressives struggling in the Jewish community are also gay and lesbian.
The group, also known as JFRIJ, was formed in 1990 to involve Jews in progressive efforts to combat racism and economic inequality in New York City.
Well, it was a women's event celebrating what JFRIJ stands for, celebrating what women have contributed. Of course, a lot of the women we celebrate when we celebrate women's history are lesbians, and as I said, a lot of the energy that founded JFRIJ and that goes into JFRIJ is lesbian energy. So it's an opportunity for Jewish women, really, and friends to get together and kick up our heels.
In April, the Astraea Lesbian Action Foundation celebrated 23 years of helping to advance the well-being of lesbians and their allies working for social justice. The event, called Astraea XXIII Women Who Rock, was hosted by writer Jewelle Gomez and held at the famed Studio 54 in New York.
23 years ago, few of us really imagined that the Astraea Foundation would be in existence, would be the largest and the oldest lesbian foundation in the world.
Among the performers that evening was singer-songwriter Holly Near.
And simply love my love for a woman.
One of the most important things that Astraea has done is help us think about what community means to us and change the way that people in general and lesbians in particular think about community.
The event was an opportunity to acknowledge women committed to community organizing and activism.
Outstanding Lesbian Award to Kansas Voice for Community Empowerment. Go on, Kansas. You go, girl.
Our next segment is from the In the Life archives about a potential killer that has not received the attention it deserves. Hepatitis is a disease spread much like HIV, and gay men are an especially high-risk group. As Mason Essif reports, there's an ongoing campaign to educate the public about hepatitis, and thankfully, some of the news is good.
40-year-old Carl Schmid says it must have happened about 20 years ago, while he was young and enjoying life.
Before the, onset of AIDS and the onset of, practicing safe sex. If you had pain over your liver.
Carl wasn't infected with HIV, but with hepatitis.
And all these questions come in my head. How long was I going to live? Is this the end? Am I going to have a productive life?
While there are several hepatitis viruses, gay men are at high risk for hepatitis A and hepatitis B. Hepatitis A is spread through unsanitary conditions, such as contact with human waste. The result is severe flu-like symptoms, including vomiting and fatigue. It can last from several weeks to several months, but then typically goes away. Hepatitis B is spread much like HIV, mainly through sex or contact with blood. Again, the symptoms are like the flu, but even when patients feel better, some 10% don't get rid of the virus. Over time, it can cause severe liver damage and can be fatal. Seattle doctor Ted Eaton has treated gay patients with both types.
Hepatitis B is much more debilitating. It has a 3 to 4% rate of death, and it can cause complications lifelong, including liver cancer. So it's pretty serious.
While for years Carl felt fine, he was always conscious of damaging his liver.
We'd like to go to parties, go out to bars, and I was, concerned. How much should I drink? If I drink, am I going to, is it going to cause me to get sick?
Carl also wonders if the hepatitis might have affected his relationships.
I would be afraid if I told someone that I was, a carrier of hepatitis, that they wouldn't be interested in me.
Unlike Carl's situation 20 years ago when he was infected, today a vaccine does exist for both hepatitis A and B.
When we ask, should we vaccinate everyone? In this case, it's really a slam dunk.
Researcher Jake Jacobs recently published a study in the Journal of the Gay and Lesbian Medical Association. He analyzed the cost of the hepatitis A vaccine to the benefit of keeping gay men healthy. To him, the results were clear.
For every dollar we spend on vaccine, we save $12 in medical costs, work loss costs. And in addition, fewer men die, and we save additional years of life. We should be out there with public health messages on the television. We should have billboards for it, the same way we have anti-smoking billboards. There's a large benefit would come from getting the gay community vaccinated.
Something like this, perhaps? This was what Dr. Eaton had in mind. He thought a public awareness campaign would help both Seattle patients and their physicians.
The medical profession has been a little bit amiss in educating that population about their risk. And so a lot of men who have sex with men come to see me and aren't aware that these vaccines are recommended for them or that they should get them. Nerves damage.
Working on Seattle's Commission for Sexual Minorities, Eaton hoped the city would help.
From the beginning, it was acknowledged by the mayor's office and the city council that sexual minority health was important.
So basically there's two different kinds.
Oh, they look great.
With the city committed to a hepatitis initiative, Drew Emery at the Public Health Department was the man to make it happen.
One of the messages that we were promoting is that vaccine makes you stronger, because it does. You are going to fight disease before it gets to you by getting vaccinated.
The ads were to run on the city buses, but first, Emery had the fun task of choosing the right models.
I went to bars, I went to the Broadway market, I walked down the street, one model I met at Kinko's. I did, your basic how do you meet guys routine, and it worked. And I'm out of practice, so, it was good for me.
Emery recruited Sean Penn-Knopfsinger at one of Seattle's dance clubs, and apparently his appeal was wider than expected.
I've had a lot of straight girls come up to me and go, oh my God, you're the one that's on the bus, and whatnot, so more than gay people.
But gay people are noticing.
I thought it was a spoof on the Abercrombie & Fitch commercials.
I think it looks excellent.
They're very gay. I thought there was actually a Gap commercial. I applaud you. Round of applause for everyone.
Okay, little stick.
The real applause goes to guys like Eric Botsford, who's getting his hepatitis B vaccination.
It's a series of 3 shots, and so I have to come back again in a month for the second booster, and then again in 6 months after that for the final shot.
All set.
Besides lifelong immunity, Eric also receives a T-shirt declaring him a member of the Hep Squad.
Wear it with pride.
But the campaign doesn't end here.
We're also doing outreach in producing materials that will be taken to bars, to the baths, to community events, places where gay and bi men are.
While the city of Seattle is doing what it can to help educate gay men on the vaccines available to prevent hepatitis, work is being done here at the National Institutes of Health on how to treat those already infected. In fact, experts say that they're already reaping benefits from years of research into another deadly disease all too familiar to gay men, HIV/AIDS.
There's no question there's an AIDS legacy, that the attention and the money and the interest poured into antiviral treatments with AIDS has benefited us directly.
Dr. Jay Hufnagel heads up hepatitis research at NIH. He says drugs such as interferon, approved in 1992, and the more recently approved lamivudine have given patients hope.
So that within the next 10 or 15 years, I believe we'll not only be able to prevent hepatitis B, which we can do now, but we'll also be able to treat it effectively so that the majority of people will not suffer the long-term consequences.
Carl may be living proof. When he got sick last year, Dr. Hufnagel prescribed lamivudine.
It worked. The drug is working. It brought my liver enzyme count down over the last year. I do feel somewhat better. I don't lay around as much. I have more energy.
But with the new medications, there are a lot of unanswered questions, such as how long will the benefits last?
What we find is a percentage of patients develop resistance, and it no longer has this effect of suppressing the virus.
While Carl is thankful for the new treatments, he wishes the vaccine would have been available to him before he became infected.
Unlike HIV, there is a vaccine. This can be prevented through a vaccine. And I would encourage, all gays and lesbians to get the vaccine. It's well worth the cost.
She is a face you might recognize, but can't exactly place. Maybe it was in the 1950s, in the legendary Jewel Box Review. If that was before your time, perhaps it was something you heard in connection with the Stonewall Rebellion. In 1999, SAGE, an organization for gay and lesbian seniors, honored her with its Lifetime Achievement Award for, in their words, her courage and enthusiasm in crashing the gates of segregation, and for the gender-bending example she showed the world. She's a person who has lived many lives and continues to endure. She's certainly an iconoclast, and for many, she's an icon.
Stormé, to me, is the jewel in the jewel box.
Stormé is one of the most energetic 80-year-old people I ever met in my entire life.
She is the grandmother of all gay people.
Stormé DeLarverie is a hero to me.
Who's Stormé? I'm a human being that survived. I've helped other people survive.
To me, as I got to know Stormé, I realized that what she was really about are the things that bring people together, the things that we have in common. Her kind of gender-bending role is known, probably what's known best.
Oh, the butch exterior hides the enormous heart of gold. Gay people are always looking for role models. It's a cliche, but it's true, and she's as good a one as we're going to find. Someone who's learned how to grow up and grow to a great age and not grow old and still be enthusiastic about life and still capable of making new friendships and, understands more about what life is about than most people.
Age is only a number. It's mind over matter. If you don't mind, it don't matter. And that's what it amounts to. And you get some wrinkles and things, Behind these glasses, incidentally, I do have eyes. But they're just very sensitive to light right now. Your mind rules your body anyway. And there's no use complaining about it. I've lived with it for years, so it's just this last spill I took over that rug went down and it hit my front teeth and it caused me a lot of problems. That's why I haven't gotten my teeth done yet. My 80th birthday really got on my nerves. I couldn't understand. I said, how in the world, how did I live this long? I should have been dead by the time I was 40. But evidently I wasn't supposed to go anywhere.
Stormé DeLarverie was born to a wealthy white father and a black mother in New Orleans, Christmas Eve, 1920, caught between two worlds from the day she was born. Her father had her privately educated while her grandfather raised her.
Well, he finally told me, because everybody, the white kids were beating me up, the black kids were beating me, everybody was jumping on me. If it wasn't because of my father's money, it was because of being a Negro with a white face. Yeah. So he told me if I didn't stop running, I'd be running the rest of my life. And when I was 15, I stopped running, and I haven't run a day since.
After leaving home, Stormé sang with jazz bands across the country, developing the silvery baritone that would serve her well in her next incarnation.
So I tried to do the proper thing, wear men's clothes on stage and wear women's clothes on the street. I got picked up twice for being a drag queen. Well, the guy that arrested me once for being a drag queen came in, clubbed me, said, he said, you don't know how to tie. I said, well, if I'm not tying my tie right, why don't you come in every night and show me how I'm supposed to tie? And he did. To this day, I can tie a bow tie with even looking in the mirror, and it'll be perfect. And he was always laughing. He was a nice man. He was only doing his job,
In 1955, Stormé became the One Girl in the Jewel Box Review, a traveling musical show of gender deception. While her girlfriend watched from the wings, Stormé would now perform as a man.
Somebody told me that I couldn't do it and that I would completely ruin my reputation and that people did not have enough problems being black I said, I didn't have any problem with it. Everybody else did.
She made a very handsome man. It worked for her.
In June of 1969 in New York City, Stormé found herself at the epicenter of the Stonewall riots. If there was a friend in need, Stormé would be there.
That was no riot. Everybody says it's a riot. It was a disobedience, and then they started fighting back. It was a rebellion. And once they got the hang of it, they rebelled quite well.
Well, many different people say that there was a cross-dressing lesbian who sparked the Stonewall riot, but to the best of my knowledge, no one had ever found someone who fit the description quite as well as she does until I interviewed her, and she said, the cop hit me and I hit him back.
I walked away with an eye bleeding, but he was laying on the ground, out.
She says, I was there and I did this, but then when I read an account of the cross-dressing lesbian who started the riot, she said, oh, I know who that was, but I'm not going to say.
Well, I got into it by accident. And then Charles Kaiser, when he wrote his book, Gay Metropolis, was trying to figure out how it started. When the fight really started, they were just running around, you know, calling names and things and throwing toilet paper down from the windows and what have you. And I just walked up. I used to come in whenever I came in town to go down to see if anybody needed help or if they were in jail. I could get them out, what I could do. I looked like I was 20, but when that happened, I was 48 years old.
In the month following those fateful nights, Stormé's girlfriend of 26 years passed away, and Stormé gave up her performing career. Whether or not Stormé threw that first punch, there is no doubt she has since embraced her role as caretaker. Today she's a presence throughout New York's West Village and Chelsea neighborhoods.
Sometimes I feel half the universe is my family.
She's still going strong, and it's because she loves life so much. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's because she hasn't grown old or bitter. She's grown mature and still loving and still enthusiastic, and I think she draws a lot of strength from the younger women who she sees in her job, and she acts as mother confessor to many of them, and so I think she has a very large and enthusiastic support group.
These days, Stormé spends her time giving lectures, working with children, and helping out at a local lesbian bar.
I mean, she lives her life quietly and does much of what she does very quietly, sometimes anonymously. And I think she's happy doing that because what matters to her is that she does what she does, not that it, you know, makes a big splash.
She's a very hard person to get to know. She's told me a few secrets over many years, but it takes a long time to get any of those details.
This is who I am. Remember the expression, what you see is what you get.
From all of us at In the Life, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by Rick Weiland, Peter Zimmer and Jim Stepp, the Gill Foundation, the Reed Williams Foundation, The Mitchell Gold Company, in the hopes of eliminating all types of fear and prejudice.
Thank you.
And the annual support of In the Life members like you.